The generosity comes at a time when many states are reveling in a rush of tax revenue collected during the previous fiscal year and a cushion of federal crisis aid funds. The Hartford Courant claims that the tax credit program was made possible due to the Connecticut's large budget surplus and over $2 billion in federal stimulus funding. What do you think about this? Tell me in the comments down below. President Biden and his administration is pushing to advance a new bill. This new plan would help avoid a recession this year. Economists say this bill should be signed into law immediately. Senior Biden administration officials pushed back on some economists' projections of an impending recession, arguing that it is possible to curb inflation without causing a major economic slowdown. Janet Yellen said today it's President Biden's top priority to bring it down, and Jerome Powell has said that his goal is to bring inflation down while maintaining a strong labor market. That's going to take skill and luck, but I believe it's possible, and I don't think a recession is inevitable. Yellen also said she expected the economy to slow because of the Federal Reserve's interest rate hikes, but stressed that consumer spending remains strong among many other things, even as people shift their spending patterns to accommodate higher food prices and energy prices. Yellen told CBS News that it's clear that most consumers, even lower income households, continue to have buffer stocks of savings that will enable them to maintain spending. The sentiment was shared by the National Economic Council Director, Brian Dess, who also pointed to low proportions of people missing payments on mortgages and credit cards. During an interview, he said that not only is a recession not inevitable, but I think a lot of people are underestimating the strengths and the resilience of the American economy. President Biden said just one day after the Federal Reserve hiked interest rates by the largest amount in nearly 30 years that a recession is not inevitable. The rate hikes, which make more borrowing more expensive, aim to contain price growth by reducing demand to better match supply, but as a business curbs spending in response to the hikes. Employment growth is already beginning to slow from the torrid gains seen earlier this year. Jerome Powell has indicated that the central bank will continue raising interest rates to restrain the economy. Raise interest rates. But some leading economists have disagreed with the administration's optimism. Larry Summers said Sunday on NBC that he predicts a recession by the end of the next year based on historical trends. Chuck Schumer and Manchin have also been privately meeting to negotiate a bill to reduce prescription costs, a piece proposed by Biden's Build Back Better. Brian Deese has stated Schumer is working with his caucus to try to get the final package in place, and we're hopeful we'll see progress on that in the coming weeks. Deese also added that the Biden administration is working to pass legislation to accelerate domestic production of semiconductor chips to boost supply and pushing for a corporate minimum tax to reduce the federal deficit. As inflation stands at a 4-decade high, families across the country continue to feel the burden and leading some governors and lawmakers to push for new stimulus checks and payments. As the outset of the crisis, Congress came together in March 2020 to provide the majority of Americans with one-time stimulus checks of up to $1,200 through the Bipartisan CARES Act. Then in December 2020, Congress again approved bipartisan legislation that doled out additional checks of up to $600 to most U.S. citizens. After President Biden took office, Democrats pushed through the American Rescue Plan without the Republican support. That bill includes around $1,400 in direct payments. The stimulus checks proved enormously popular, with millions of Americans turning to online petitions to demand further direct payments, and some state leaders have launched their own initiatives as families feel the crunch of inflation. And the Pennsylvania governor this week called for $2,000 checks to be sent out to many state residents. Folks, what do you think about this? Tell me in the comments.
Increase to 20% of GDP in 2022, which I believe is up about 17% from the previous forecast.
That's right. The revenues will reach just slightly under 20%, which is up very substantially from our previous projections.
And we've seen approximately 8.3 million jobs created since President Biden first took office. Is that right?
Yes, employment has grown very sharply as the U.S. has come out of the pandemic, as you said, since the beginning of 2021.
And is it your understanding that 8.3 million jobs that were created, that's a record in American history for a similar point in time in terms of a president's new administration?
Yes, that would be the most jobs created in a single year. So that's over the 2021, the first year of the administration.
Am I correct that the number of people relying on unemployment benefits has dropped to the lowest level since 1970?
the number of people collecting unemployment benefits, it's dropped very substantially. I don't know offhand if it's the lowest, but I suspect it might well be. It's with the rebound and the very strong, very tight labor market, we've seen lots of good outcomes, like you just mentioned.
And last year, how many new businesses were created in the United States of America?
There's the rebound from the pandemic has led to a surge in business creation. Obviously we saw businesses go out when the economy locked down, and then a huge number have been created. I don't know the number of millions offhand, but it's been this is a historic increase in business formation and entrepreneurship.
As my understanding, that approximately 5.4 million new businesses were created in the last year, as you indicated, a substantial return of American entrepreneurship. In terms of deficit reduction, because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, I thought were deficit hawks and cared about the deficit. That's all we heard about, certainly during the Tea Party years. Am I correct that?
Madam President.
Senator from Kansas.
Madam President, thank you very much. We're about, at least many of us, ready to return home to our states and to visit with our constituents in person. And that's a common practice for me. I can indicate to my colleagues in the Senate that the conversations, they're wide-ranging at home, but certainly if there's a theme, it's the result, consequences that Americans and Kansans are feeling in regard to inflation. The things at the grocery store, the price at the pump, rent, all the things are rising, and people are struggling to pay the bills, and things are being left out of what someone can afford in their budget because everything costs more. Kansas is an energy-producing state. We certainly are an agricultural state, and I would tell you, when I talk to farmers and ranchers, commodity prices have gone up, and one might think that that's something that would be very beneficial to farmers. But this inflation has raised the price of everything that they purchase to create the crops that feed us across America and around the world. One of the components and one of the reasons that inflation is rising so rapidly is energy costs. Even for my farmers, fertilizer is made from phosphates and natural gas. Diesel fuel is used in the vehicles and tractors, trucks, and our ability to provide that food for the world is being hampered because we're going to lose money when we grow crops, even though they may bring a higher price than they did just a few months ago. So many components of what we purchase in this country, and one of the reasons costs are all rising is because the price of oil and gas. I am